The singer Chris Rea has died at the age of 74. The Middlesbrough-born musician was behind the festive classic Driving Home for Christmas.
The gravelly voice that soundtracked countless Christmas journeys fell silent on December 22, 2025. Chris Rea, 74, passed away in hospital following what his family described as a short illness, the final chapter in a decades-long battle against disease that had shaped both his music and his spirit. 7 details reveal how Britain's most resilient blues warrior faced his last road. Just one day before his death, Chris Rea posted what would become his farewell to the world. The image was hauntingly prophetic. A car on a snow-covered motorway beneath gray December skies, paired with words that now read like a goodbye. Driving home for Christmas with 1,000 memories, he wrote, adding, top to toe in tailbacks. If it's a white Christmas, let's hope the journey's a smooth one. For a man whose Christmas anthem had become Britain's unofficial festive soundtrack, the timing felt like destiny calling him home. The post attracted thousands of responses from fans who sensed something different in its tone. Where his usual social media presence carried defiant optimism despite his health struggles, this felt reflective, almost wistful. The photograph itself, a lone vehicle navigating treacherous winter roads, seemed to mirror his own journey through decades of medical uncertainty. Friends later revealed that Rea had been unusually contemplative in his final weeks, speaking more frequently about legacy and the songs that would outlive him. The man who had always deflected praise about his Christmas classic seemed to understand its true significance as his own winter approached. As one close friend noted, Chris knew that song would be his lasting gift to the world. That final post felt like he was saying goodbye through the lyrics that defined him. The cruel irony wasn't lost on those who knew him. A man whose voice had guided millions safely home for Christmas was himself preparing for his own final journey. In those last 24 hours, as his condition deteriorated, the post stood as a digital epitaph written in his own words. Sometimes the most profound goodbyes come disguised as ordinary moments, until hindsight reveals their true meaning. At 33, when most musicians are hitting their stride, Chris Rea received the diagnosis that would reshape everything. Pancreatic cancer, one of medicine's most unforgiving adversaries, had invaded the body that created Fool If You Think It's Over. The year 2001 brought radical surgery, complete pancreas removal, leaving him dependent on insulin for life. Yet this wasn't surrender, it was transformation. The disease that should have ended his story became the crucible that forged his most authentic music. Rea spoke candidly about the moment doctors delivered the news. When they told me I had pancreatic cancer, I thought that was it, he once revealed in an interview. But then I realized I could either feel sorry for myself or use whatever time I had left to create something meaningful. The surgery that followed was brutal. 8 hours on the operating table, months of recovery, and a complete restructuring of how his body functioned. The removal of his pancreas brought unexpected creative freedom. No longer concerned with commercial success or industry expectations, Rea began exploring the blues with a raw honesty that his earlier pop hits had only hinted at. Albums like The Blue Cafe and Stony Road carried the weight of someone who had stared mortality in the face and emerged with stories to tell. Medical experts marvel at his survival. Pancreatic cancer, particularly when diagnosed in the 1990s, carried a 5-year survival rate below 5%. That Rea lived another 24 years, continuing to tour and record, defied every statistical prediction. As his oncologist later reflected, Chris possessed a will to live that transcended medical science. His music became his medicine, and his audiences became his life support. The insulin injections became as routine as tuning his guitar. Tour riders included medical equipment alongside amplifiers. Yet rather than hide his condition, Rea used it to connect with fans facing their own health battles. His concerts became gatherings of survivors, united by the understanding that every song might be the last. In fighting cancer, Chris Rea didn't just save his own life. He transformed what it meant to live with purpose. Behind the platinum albums and sold-out concerts lay a medical journey that would break most men. 9 major operations, 32 weeks confined to hospital beds. Each procedure a gamble, each recovery a small miracle. Rea spoke openly about how the operating theater became as familiar as any recording studio, how surgeons' faces became as recognizable as his bandmates. The man who sang about life's highways spent years navigating corridors between wards, fighting battles the public never saw. The operations weren't confined to his pancreatic cancer. Diabetes complications from his missing pancreas required additional surgeries, kidney procedures, circulation issues, infections that threatened to overwhelm his compromised immune system. Each hospital stay brought new challenges, new fears, new small victories measured in stable blood sugar readings and successful wound healing. I remember one surgeon telling me I was like a vintage car, Rea once joked. Every time they fixed one thing, something else would break down. But vintage cars are worth preserving, aren't they? The humor masked deeper trauma, the psychological toll of repeated anesthesia, the frustration of interrupted recording sessions, the fear that accompanied each preoperative conversation. Hospital staff spoke of his remarkable resilience. Despite the pain and uncertainty, Rea would often entertain other patients, quietly strumming an acoustic guitar when strength permitted. Pediatric wards became unexpected venues for impromptu concerts, with Rea understanding that music could heal more than medicine alone. The 32 weeks represented more than time lost. They were transformative periods where Rea confronted the fragility of existence. Between surgeries, he wrote some of his most introspective material, songs that captured the strange intimacy of medical dependence. As one nurse recalled, Chris never complained, never demanded special treatment. He approached each surgery like he approached his music, with complete commitment and trust in the process. Those hospital corridors became highways of a different kind, leading not to concert halls but to operating theaters. Yet each successful procedure was a victory lap, each clean bill of health a standing ovation. In surviving 9 surgeries, Chris Rea proved that sometimes the most profound performances happen far from any stage. Just when it seemed his health battles had stabilized, fate delivered another blow. 2016 brought a stroke that threatened not just his mobility, but the very essence of his artistry, his ability to create. The fingers that had coaxed magic from guitar strings, the voice that had carried millions through their darkest moments, both hung in the balance. Recovery meant relearning basics that had once been instinct, rebuilding coordination note by note, word by word. The stroke struck without warning during what should have been a routine day at his Berkshire home. Joan found him collapsed, unable to speak coherently, his left side unresponsive. The ambulance ride to hospital carried the weight of everything he had survived. Would this be the final crescendo to his decades-long health symphony? Speech therapy sessions replaced recording sessions. Where once Rea had commanded audiences with his distinctive gravelly delivery, he now struggled to form simple sentences. The hardest part wasn't the physical recovery, he later reflected. It was watching my wife's face when I couldn't remember the words to songs I'd written 30 years ago. The cognitive challenges proved more devastating than any surgical scar. Physiotherapy became his new discipline. Guitar exercises took on medical necessity, not for artistic expression, but for basic motor function. Chord progressions became neurological rehabilitation. Scales transformed into occupational therapy. The man who had played with intuitive brilliance was forced to intellectualize every finger movement, every vocal phrase. The breakthrough came during a therapy session when Rea instinctively began humming "Driving Home for Christmas." The melody bypassed damaged neural pathways, emerging intact from muscle memory deeper than conscious thought. His therapist later described it as a miraculous moment. Music had been his language for so long that it found alternative routes through his brain. Recovery wasn't complete. Subtle changes in his speech remained. Fine motor control never fully returned. Yet, the stroke taught Rhea something surgery hadn't, that creativity transcends physical limitation. His post-stroke recordings carried new emotional depth, imperfections that made them more human, more real. Sometimes the most beautiful music emerges from broken instruments. His family's statement was deliberately sparse, following a short illness. But for those who had followed Rhea's medical odyssey, these 3 words carried immense weight. After decades of public battles with cancer, diabetes complications, and stroke recovery, this final chapter unfolded away from the spotlight he'd grown to distrust. Sources close to the family suggest his various health conditions had reached a tipping point, his body finally unable to sustain the fight it had waged for over 20 years. The short illness likely represented a cascade of complications rather than a single diagnosis. When multiple organ systems have been compromised by decades of medical intervention, the body becomes increasingly fragile. Diabetes can trigger kidney problems, circulation issues can lead to infections, and a history of stroke increases vulnerability to subsequent neurological events. Medical sources, speaking anonymously due to patient confidentiality, suggested that Rhea's final weeks involved multiple hospital admissions. Each time seemed manageable: a routine adjustment to insulin levels, monitoring of blood pressure irregularities, precautionary scans to check for cancer recurrence. The seriousness only became apparent when treatments that had previously stabilized his condition began failing. Chris had cheated death so many times that we almost believed he was invincible, confided a family friend. Even in those final days, there was hope that this was just another setback he'd overcome like all the others. The optimism was understandable. Rhea had survived medical challenges that had defeated younger, healthier individuals. The decision to keep details private reflected Rhea's lifelong relationship with fame. While he had been open about his major health battles when they served to inspire other patients, he maintained fierce protection over his family's privacy. His daughters, Josephine and Julia, had grown up in the shadow of their father's medical uncertainty. The final illness was their time to grieve without public scrutiny. Hospital staff who treated Rhea in his final days spoke of his characteristic dignity. Even as his condition deteriorated, he thanked nurses, asked about their families, and apologized for any inconvenience his care might cause. As one doctor noted, he faced the end with the same grace he'd shown throughout his health battles, concerned more for others than himself. The short illness that ended Chris Rhea's remarkable survival story reminds us that sometimes the most epic battles end not with dramatic crescendos, but with quiet surrenders. His body had given everything it had to give. 24 years beyond a death sentence, hundreds of concerts, despite chronic illness, thousands of moments of joy carved from the stone of suffering. In an era where celebrity deaths often occur in isolation, Chris Rhea's departure carried a dignity that matched his music. Wife Joan and daughters Josephine and Julia were at his bedside when he passed peacefully in hospital. The man who had spent so much time surrounded by medical equipment and hospital staff in his final years found comfort in the voices that had sustained him through every surgery, every setback, every small victory along the way. Joan Rhea had been more than a wife. She had served as medical advocate, tour manager during his health crises, and emotional anchor through decades of uncertainty. Their marriage, begun in 1973, had endured pressures that would have destroyed lesser partnerships. Cancer diagnosis at 33, multiple surgeries, career interruptions, and the constant specter of mortality had tested their bond in ways most couples never face. Their daughters had grown up understanding that family time was precious because it was precarious. School events might be missed for medical appointments, family holidays were planned around treatment schedules, and every milestone was celebrated with the knowledge that future ones weren't guaranteed. Yet, this awareness created intimacy rather than distance. The Rhea family learned to find profound meaning in ordinary moments. Dad always said that his illness was a gift, because it taught him what really mattered, Josephine later reflected. When you know time is limited, you don't waste it on small arguments or petty concerns. The hospital room where Rhea died had become familiar territory. The family had maintained vigils there before, during previous health scares that had ultimately resolved in his favor. The final hours reportedly involved little drama. Rhea drifted in and out of consciousness, occasionally responding to familiar voices, but mostly resting peacefully. Hospital staff, who had cared for him through multiple admissions, maintained respectful distance while ensuring his comfort. Pain management became the priority, not heroic interventions, but simple human dignity. Music played softly in the background, not his own songs, but classical pieces that had brought him comfort throughout his illness. The man whose voice had filled concert halls spent his final moments listening rather than performing, surrounded by love rather than applause. As his breathing became increasingly shallow, Joan held one hand while his daughters took turns holding the other. The moment of death was described as peaceful. No struggle, no dramatic final words, simply a gentle transition from presence to absence. As one family member later observed, Chris faced death the same way he faced everything else in his life, with quiet courage and concern for the people he loved. In choosing to die surrounded by family rather than alone with medical technology, Chris Rea authored a final song about what truly matters when the music stops. December 22nd, 3 days before Christmas. For millions who had driven home to their families with Rhea's voice accompanying their journey, the timing felt like a cruel irony. The song that had become synonymous with holiday reunions would forever carry the weight of farewell. Radio stations faced an impossible choice: honor his memory by playing the anthem that defined British Christmas, or recognize that every note now carried the sting of loss. Driving Home for Christmas wasn't intended as Rhea's masterpiece when he wrote it in 1986. Originally relegated to B-side status, the song gradually built cultural significance through repeated seasonal airplay. Its genius lay not in complex arrangements or profound lyrics, but in its ability to capture a universal human experience: the anticipation of homecoming, the warmth of family reunion, the bittersweet nature of Christmas travel. Radio programmers across Britain faced unprecedented dilemmas in the hours following Rhea's death announcement. BBC Radio 2, which had made the song a Christmas staple, initially pulled it from playlists out of sensitivity, but listener requests flooded switchboards. People wanted to hear Rhea's voice, to process their grief through the song that had soundtracked their own family journeys. We realized that Driving Home for Christmas wasn't just Chris's song anymore. It belonged to everyone who had ever felt that mixture of excitement and exhaustion while traveling to see loved ones, explained one radio executive. Playing it became our way of honoring not just his memory, but the memories he'd helped create for millions of families. Social media exploded with tributes that connected personal memories to Rhea's music. Parents shared stories of children asking why everyone was crying when the Christmas song came on. Adult children described calling elderly parents to check they were okay, knowing the song would trigger memories of their own Christmas journeys decades earlier. The irony extended beyond mere timing. Rhea had spent years avoiding live performances of his Christmas hit, uncomfortable with its commercial success, and preferring his more blues-oriented material. He didn't perform it live until 2014, nearly 30 years after its initial release. Yet the song that had felt like a commercial obligation became the vehicle through which Britain mourned his loss. Streaming services reported unprecedented plays of Driving Home for Christmas in the 24 hours following the death announcement. The song climbed digital charts, not through promotion, but through collective grieving. Millions processing loss through melody, finding comfort in Rhea's voice even as they mourned its absence. The Christmas timing that initially felt cruel began to reveal deeper meaning. As one fan observed, Chris Rea gave us the perfect Christmas song, and then he left right before Christmas, so we'd never forget him. Every December 22nd, when we hear those opening guitar chords, we'll remember both the joy his music brought and the sadness of losing him. In death as in life, Chris Rea proved that the most powerful songs don't just entertain, they become the soundtrack to human experience, playing long after the musician has left the stage. Chris Rea's final journey reveals a truth about resilience that transcends music. Sometimes the greatest performances happen not on stage, but in hospital corridors, rehabilitation centers, and family sitting rooms. For over 2 decades, he transformed medical necessity into artistic opportunity, finding melody in the rhythm of dialysis machines and discovering harmony in the chaos of chronic illness. His death 3 days before Christmas carries symbolic weight that extends beyond cruel irony. December 22nd becomes a reminder that life's most meaningful moments often arrive disguised as ordinary days, that farewells can be found in Instagram posts about snowy motorways, and that some songs become immortal not through their complexity, but through their ability to capture universal human experiences. The 7 details of Rea's final chapter, from prophetic social media posts to the peaceful family gathering at his bedside, paint a portrait of dignity in decline, of grace under the most severe pressure imaginable. His story reminds us that survival isn't measured in years, but in moments of connection, that strength isn't about avoiding weakness, but about creating beauty, despite it. What made Chris Rea extraordinary wasn't his ability to cheat death for 24 years after a terminal diagnosis. It was his commitment to living fully during the time he had. Every concert became a celebration, every album a victory lap, every Christmas song a gift to families he'd never meet, but whose journeys he'd soundtrack for generations. As we drive home this Christmas, his gravelly voice will guide us through winter highways, carrying the weight of his story and the warmth of his humanity. The roads that took him away also lead us together. And in that paradox, Chris Rea achieved the only immortality that truly matters. What are your thoughts on Chris Rea's incredible journey? Share your memories in the comments below and subscribe for more stories of remarkable resilience.